My name is Andy, and I am currently living in central Maine. And in 2020, August of 2020, I was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. Um, it had spread into my liver, my lymph nodes, and also on the surface of my bones. So it was a pretty dire situation. I was given 6 to 9 months to live, and surprisingly, I am still here, almost 5 years later now. For fun, I'm actually a YouTube vlogger, so I like to travel and I like to vlog my travels. That's basically where my interest lies. We're going to spend a couple hours here on our own island exploring before we head off to the train station and eventually to Rome. All right, good timers, we have arrived in Rome, right here at the train station. Other than that, I am also a cook by trade, so I do love to cook at home. 2019, about 2 years before my diagnosis. I was actually on vacation in South Beach, Miami, at the very end of COVID, or right in the middle of COVID, I guess it was. But on that vacation, I started to notice I was feeling very, very tired, getting very weak when I was just walking short distances, a little out of breath. Also was having some nausea and stomach bowel issues. It's pretty severe heartburn, which I've always kind of had throughout my life off and on. So I wasn't real concerned with it then. But the main red flag for me was the fatigue at that point. We decided to go see a doctor. But once again, because of the current environment of COVID, it was very hard to get in to see anybody at first. So once I got in to see a doctor, they kind of were looking at my heart mostly. So we kind of focused on that a little bit. Got on some medications for that. And unfortunately, they didn't work, and things started getting worse. I was starting to almost fall asleep at work. I was working in the restaurant industry, standing on my feet, 15 hours a day, and almost falling asleep while standing up. So I obviously knew that wasn't right. So a few more tests down the road, an endoscopy and some blood tests revealed that I had anemia and that I had a large ulcer in my stomach that had perforated the stomach walls. And that's pretty much how I came to find out that I was stage 4 cancer. I kind of ignored the symptoms for about 2 years. So I think if I hadn't ignored those, or if they hadn't been not misdiagnosed, but just diagnosed as something else originally, then I probably wouldn't have been stage 4. But unfortunately, I think it progressed quite rapidly during those course of those 2 years. The one thing that'll really always stick with me forever is the feelings that I had. I still remember that very first phone call and just hearing the words that I had cancer and that it may be stage 4. The original diagnosis, they weren't sure it was stage 4, but they definitely knew it was cancer. And I just remember almost like looking at the mirror and not really recognizing myself. It was almost an out-of-body experience. I was completely numb to everything. I mean, there were people there and they were talking and I was talking back, but it just didn't feel like I was in the moment and even present. It just felt like my body was there, but everything else was somewhere else. I was diagnosed in Maine at the Harold Alphons Center for Cancer Care. And I went and got a second opinion at Dana-Farber in Boston, one of the well-known cancer centers in the United States. And they actually agreed with my first doctor back in Maine. So that made me feel good in one respect. In another respect, it didn't, because they agreed that I basically only had 6 to 9 months to live. So I was kind of hoping for a better second opinion. I did not get it. So that reality hit very hard as well, knowing that the first doctor was correct. So I had my first treatment in Boston, and I actually blacked out for about a week after that treatment because my body just was not used to having that many foreign substances in it all at once. And I still don't remember it to this day. So that was my first treatment. My second treatment I got back in Maine, and that was at Rankton Fairview Hospital, and that went much better than the first one. And I continued to get my treatments there throughout my cancer journey. So about 2 years total, and over 150 chemo treatments.
Third round of chemo, I should say, hit me really hard. I went for about 2 weeks and had symptoms for about 2 weeks, or not symptoms, but
side effects.
Side effects, yeah. Side effects for about 2 weeks, including the hair falling out, which is why I decided to cut it today. But side effects were definitely bad for that third round. So for the fourth round, which we did a couple days ago, they did decide to cut my dosage of the chemo back a little bit by about 20%. So hopefully that helps with the side effects. And so far, so good. I do have a few hiccups, as you can probably tell a little bit. But other than that, my side effects on this round so far have been pretty minimal.
I was not a candidate for surgery, unfortunately, because it had ravaged so many other areas of my body that at that point the doctors really didn't think it was going to matter much. And they said the less stress on the body, probably the more beneficial it would be for me. So we decided not to do surgery at all. So I still have my entire stomach, which is great now. It was kind of depressing to know that surgery was not an option and that wouldn't help me. Um, so what they did is I went on a treatment plan of Fullest, which is a form of chemotherapy, and also immunotherapy in conjunction with that. Basically, I was told that it was to make me comfortable, more of a palliative care kind of therapy. It wasn't going to heal me, but it might prolong my life, beyond 6 to 9 months if I was lucky.
Inside it is this ball of chemo med. So right now it's basically the size of a lemon. Feels solid like a lemon. So it'll shrink down over the next 36 hours or so, and you'll see it basically shrivel up like a lemon. If you left it in the fridge too long and it started to get rotten, that's pretty much what it looks like. So, but it's got cords that come out, and that right there is about the entire length of the cord, but it goes all the way up my stomach and right into that part that I showed you earlier, and then right directly into my bloodstream.
I did chemo and immunotherapy for about a year and a half. Unfortunately, the side effects of the chemotherapy were so extreme with me that we discontinued the chemotherapy after a while, and I just went straight with immunotherapy, which was much better for me physically. I actually had virtually no side effects at all from the immunotherapy. So once the chemo was out of my system, I felt 10 times better.
One major side effect, though, I do have right now is this neuropathy here in my hands. As you can see, my hand's pretty much beet red right now. It's not supposed to be that color, I don't think. It also feels like it's on fire. So, pretty much that's it, though. Same thing with the feet; those feel a little numb and pringly, and little warm as well. Right after chemo, quite often there's a lot of nausea involved. So obviously that doesn't make you want to eat too much. Also diarrhea, which obviously doesn't want to make you eat too much either. Thankfully, I haven't really had either one of those today, but still, your taste buds change a lot. Everything doesn't taste like it used to. Things that used to taste sweet sometimes don't really have much flavor at all anymore.
The major one for me was neuropathy, and I think that unfortunately is a lot of the major issues for a lot of chemo patients. Oxyplatin was the main chemo drug that I was on that did the most damage to my system. I had severe neuropathy in my hands and my feet both. Got to the point that I actually wasn't even able to dress myself. My wife was having to help me dress because I couldn't button my shirt or I couldn't button my pants. Couldn't tie my own shoes. She was helping me to eat and to drink because I couldn't handle just a simple water bottle because it would hurt my hands too much. And that was the major one. I got lucky. I did not have too much nausea. I had a little bit here and there, but the medication primarily took care of that. I did lose my hair for probably 6 or 9 months of it, and fatigue as well. I did a lot of sleeping.
And I feel tired, really tired, but a little worn down. Had a decent night's sleep finally, so that was good. Slept about 7 hours instead of 4, which I have been.
The first 6 months were really the worst. In that I was basically bedridden for about 6 months. I was able to get up and go to the bathroom and go to the car to get to my treatments. But I was in a wheelchair for quite a bit of it. My wife would have to help me to the bathroom, and she would help me in the shower and things like that. She learned to be a really good cook. It basically took pretty much my entire livelihood, unfortunately. One thing I was still able to do is I did do a few vlogs for my YouTube channel because I could just edit those on my laptop while sitting in my chair. And that was actually a great distraction. It gave me something to do that I actually enjoyed and took a little bit of my depression away. Beyond the actual first initial diagnosis and the shock of that, I would definitely say the chemo. It really tore my insides up. Physically, I wasn't doing well. I'd heard before, I even got cancer, that quite often people will say that the chemo treatments themselves are actually worse than the cancer. I was kind of going into it naive and hoping they were kidding, and they weren't. It was definitely pretty vicious on my body. I think a lot of the pain that I was experiencing was actually from the chemo and not from the cancer. But in the long run, it worked out, I guess. But yeah, it's very harsh, and I think that's why I advocate so strongly today is to keep trying to raise awareness and raise money, so they can find different treatments that aren't so physically exhausting and things like that. And I think immunotherapy is going to be great for a lot of people. The side effects are so much less um, compared to chemotherapy, and there's been some great successes with it. So I'm very happy that I was a candidate for that, and I think it worked miracles for me. Even after the first 3 months, showed a little bit of shrinkage, and I think that's what kept me motivated to keep on going. Every 3 months, it would show a little bit less cancer and a little bit less cancer, and slowly it started to disappear outright. And I think after seeing those results, it just gave me that motivation and that hope that in the first 3 months I didn't have. I had absolutely no hope whatsoever. I was pretty depressed, not sure what I was going to do except die. And yeah, once I saw that first scan, it gave me a little bit of a boost mentally, and I could persevere after that, basically. I actually didn't find out until I looked at it, until I saw my scans, and then I read the doctor's report before the doctor had a chance to actually tell me. They had an online portal for the hospital I was at, so I was able to go on that online portal and look at the results. And it said in the results that no evidence of disease. And I'm not sure if it was me just being naive or just not believing it, but I remember asking my wife, does no evidence of disease mean what I think it does? And she kind of chuckled and smiled and started tearing up a little bit herself and said, yeah, I think that means that they don't see any cancer. And so about two days later, I actually met with the doctor, my oncologist. And I remember her walking into the office and had a big smile on her face. And she was all ready to give me this great news that I didn't know anything about. And I looked at her and I smiled back and I went, I saw it was NED. Does that mean what I think it means? She goes, I was going to tell you. She goes, how dare you cheat? So I kind of stole her thunder there a little bit. But yeah, so that's pretty much how I found out. And I remember that she went out and she hadn't told the nurses yet. So she asked for my permission to tell the nurses, and she went out, and I remember her telling all the nurses. And I remember the oncology unit just applauding, and I remember the nurses crying themselves, and everybody just giving me hugs, and a couple of them saying that they never expected that, and obviously I never expected it either. And it was just a big weight off your shoulders, just a huge relief. And it was almost the same feeling as when I got my first initial diagnosis. It was almost an out of body experience. It was just a good one, but it was that same thing. I just felt kind of numb inside, not really believing it. It was actually almost 2 years exactly to my diagnosis. So I was diagnosed in August of 2021, and in August of 2023, I was declared NED. So that's the only reason why I remember it, because I just found it really ironic that it was literally within probably a week of my diagnosis that I got the all clear. So um, took me about another year of immunotherapy just to make sure they got it all. But then in 2024, I rang the bell. And I made sure that my oncology team was there with me, and my wife was there with me, and we all rang it together and all cried together and had more hugs. And definitely another experience that I'll never forget. I try and to be a lot more positive than I used to be. Try to make positive strides every chance I get. And I'm in a couple of different advocacy groups, which I think helps me a lot with that. Hope for Stomach Cancer is a big advocacy group that I'm with, and they do a lot of work on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., advocating for others, and a lot of online forums and things like that. Another one that I recently joined, probably about 9 months ago, I think it was now, was Man Up to Cancer, and I'm very glad I found that. That is exclusively a men's cancer group. It's about 3,000 members, most of them in the United States, but we do have some international members as well. And their motto is no man should go through cancer alone. And that really resonates with me, because you do feel very, very alone when you have cancer. Even though you're surrounded by people, it's just people don't understand cancer unless they've had it. They don't understand the physical feelings. They don't understand the mental aspect of it. And in groups like Hope for Stomach Cancer and Man Up to Cancer, that's where you have people that truly understand you. And that's where you truly have that fellowship and that journey, and those people that'll walk the journey with you. It's very important that you have people to walk the journey with you and to support you and to give you that strength. As I said earlier, I couldn't find a whole lot of hope in the first 6 months. You don't find hope when you look at a scan and you're lit up like a Christmas tree. You don't find hope when your wife is crying because of the news that you only have 6 months to live. you don't find hope when you're sitting in a chemo chair and you're getting fluids pumped into you for 8 hours, and there's people beside you that are doing the same thing, and it's hard to find hope in any of those situations. But when you have a group of people around you that are cheering you on and that are having that strength for you because they know you don't, that makes the world of difference. Nobody should have to walk the journey alone, and I think by having that support system and having people that can walk the journey with you is truly when miracles can happen. And I think that's a lot of why I'm still here today, is because I had those people fighting for me when I couldn't fight. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is to fight for other people the way that people fought for me. When I was really deep down in the trenches of chemo, the only vlogs I was able to do were about cancer. So I did do some vlogs about that. And I think doing those kind of things kind of helped me with my own emotions and dealing with things. So I was able to get out and talk about it. And just through aspects of like that, I did a couple of live YouTube shows where people just ask me questions and I'd answer them as best as I could based on my own experiences. Man Up to Cancer is a big one. We do monthly meetups, usually at a restaurant or a bar or a pub or things like that. Once a year, we have a large meetup in the wilderness of Pennsylvania, in the Poconos. And it's basically 3 days of just men getting together, hanging out at the campfire and chatting about their experiences and just enjoying life. Hot air balloons, archery, axe throwing, zip lining, obviously hiking as you're in the woods. And yeah, so it's a great gathering. We call it the Gathering of Wolves because we consider ourselves a wolf pack, and got tattoos. I just got myself a brand new tattoo, and that's the Wolfpack logo right there for the Man Up to Cancer group. There's a couple of conferences every year. One just got done in Los Angeles last week that I wasn't able to attend, but also in Washington, D.C. every spring they go there, and they have a 3-day conference as well as an advocacy day on Capitol Hill that you're able to talk to some of the senators and congressmen and advocate for different stomach cancer things. After you've been given that all clear diagnosis, a lot of people just think that your life returns to normal. And unfortunately, there is no normal after cancer diagnosis. There's no going back to what you were before that. For me, it's like every ache and pain I have, whether it originates from my stomach or my ear or my head or my finger, I always think, what is that? Is that cancer? Is that, and so, in between those scans, every time you have any kind of illness, you kind of associate it with maybe it's cancer again. And so it's just kind of the same mental battle. So yes, anxiety definitely is a real thing. I'm lucky enough now that I'm getting my scans. I have results in about an hour. My whole theory is just try not to focus on it. Try to focus on the positives every day. Another mantra of the Man Up to Cancer group is to live your best day possible. When I was having chemo, would just be able to get up and go to the bathroom by myself without any help. If I could do that, that was an accomplishment. That was the best thing I did all day. And nowadays, my best day possible is helping others. If I can talk to another cancer patient online or on Facebook Messenger and help them somehow, that gives me some fulfillment, and that makes it a good day for me. I'm technically retired from real work. As soon as I got my diagnosis, I unfortunately had to resign from my job simply because of the side effects and the chemo treatments and the schedule. And I decided after I had the all clear that I didn't really care to go back to work. I was lucky enough to survive, and I didn't want to waste the rest of my life, being in a job for 40 hours a week. I wanted to enjoy my life as much as I could, because that's another reality with cancer, is that you always know that it could come back at any moment. So you want to live every single day that you have as best you can and to the fullest. And so I think by doing the advocacy work that I'm now doing, I think that gives me the fulfillment that I need in my life. I really didn't have any hope those first 3 or 4 months of my treatments. And I had to search really deep down inside to get that hope. I had lots of anger and depression. That was easy. It's very easy to become depressed and be very easy to become angry. It's not so easy to find hope. But for me, I found hope in those around me. And so that brings me to my next thing, which would be don't go it alone. Join up in these groups. There's all kinds of groups on social media nowadays that can help you out. You don't have to be alone in your journey. There's always people around you that will care for you and will help you through your journey. find your strength, find a reason to live, make it every day your best day possible, and just keep on going. Set yourself small goals. Don't give up on life. Find a reason to live.